Imagine if your two uncles both said, "I should be the boss of this whole country," and instead of talking it out they started a war. Now imagine that fight lasted 30 years. That's basically what happened in England during something called the Wars of the Roses. And no, it wasn't about gardening. It was about power. It was about family. And it almost destroyed the country. By the end of this story, you'll understand why these royal families started fighting, why they couldn't stop, and how all that chaos led to one of the most famous kings in history. Let's break it down. A long time ago, England was ruled by a royal family called the Plantagenets. But inside that big family tree were two main branches, kind of like two teams made up of cousins. One team was called Lancaster. Their symbol was a red rose. The other team was called York. Their symbol was a white rose. Both sides were related to a former king named Edward III. And both sides believed they had the better right to rule England. At the time, the king was Henry VI from the Lancaster side. But here's the problem: Henry wasn't a strong leader. He was kind and gentle, but he struggled with serious mental illness. Sometimes he couldn't make decisions. Once, he didn't respond to anyone for over a year. Now imagine your country trying to run without a leader who can lead. That creates confusion. And when there's confusion, powerful people start competing. England was also losing a huge war against France called the 100 Years' War. Soldiers were dying. Money was running out. People were frustrated and embarrassed. So a powerful noble from the York side, Richard, Duke of York, stepped forward and said something dangerous: "I think I have a better claim to the throne." That wasn't just an opinion. That was a challenge. And once that challenge was made, things got violent. In 1455, the first big battle happened in a town called St. Albans. Soldiers loyal to York fought soldiers loyal to Lancaster right in the streets. Important nobles were killed. The king was captured. Captured by his own people. Now here's something important to understand. Back then, losing a political fight wasn't like losing an election. You didn't just go home and try again later. You could lose your land, your money, your title, even your life. So neither side wanted to lose. Ever. That made every battle more serious. Every defeat created anger. Every death created someone who wanted revenge. The fighting kept going. One of the most powerful men during this time was Richard Neville, known as the Earl of Warwick. People called him the Kingmaker. Why? Because he helped put kings on the throne. At first, he supported the York side and helped Edward IV, Richard of York's son, become king after a massive battle in 1461 called the Battle of Towton. It was one of the bloodiest days in English history. Thousands of soldiers died in freezing snow. Edward IV became king, and it looked like York had won. But then something surprising happened. Edward secretly married a woman named Elizabeth Woodville. Warwick had wanted Edward to marry someone powerful from another country to create strong alliances. Warwick felt insulted and pushed aside. So he switched sides. Yes, the Kingmaker who helped York win now supported Lancaster. This shows something important: this war wasn't just about roses. It was about power. Alliances changed. People picked whichever side helped them the most. Eventually, Warwick was killed in battle. Edward IV returned to the throne and ruled for years. Finally, it seemed like the fighting might be over. But then Edward IV suddenly died in 1483. His son, Edward V, was only 12 years old. That's about the age of a middle schooler. Because he was so young, his uncle Richard was supposed to protect him and help rule until he grew up. Instead, something mysterious happened. Richard declared that Edward V wasn't the real king. Soon after, Edward and his younger brother were locked inside the Tower of London. And then they disappeared. No one knows for sure what happened to them. Many people believe they were killed. Richard crowned himself King Richard III. But people didn't trust him. If he really had removed his own nephews to become king, that was terrifying. And when people are scared of their king, they start looking for someone else. That someone else was Henry Tudor. Henry wasn't the strongest candidate. His connection to the royal family was distant. But after 30 years of fighting, many nobles were simply tired. So many powerful families had been destroyed. Fathers, sons, brothers gone. Lands had been taken and retaken. England was exhausted. In 1485, Henry invaded England and faced Richard III at the Battle of Bosworth field. During the battle, something dramatic happened. Some of Richard's supporters switched sides right in the middle of the fight. Richard charged straight toward Henry in a bold attack, hoping to end the war in one strike. But he was surrounded and killed. After the battle, Henry was crowned King Henry VII. And just like that, the Wars of the Roses ended. So why did this huge family war happen in the first place? First, weak leadership. Henry VI couldn't control powerful nobles. When a leader isn't strong, others try to take control. Second, powerful nobles with private armies. These lords weren't just politicians. They had thousands of loyal soldiers. That made starting battles much easier. Third, fear. Losing meant losing everything. So compromise felt too risky. Each side believed total victory was the only safe option. But here's the surprising twist. All this fighting actually made future kings stronger. Because so many nobles had died, there were fewer powerful families left to challenge the king. Henry VII made sure nobles couldn't keep huge private armies anymore. He tightened control and strengthened the monarchy. This led to the Tudor dynasty, including Henry VIII and Queen Elizabeth I, rulers who shaped England's future in huge ways. So in the end, the nobles fought to gain power, but they weakened themselves instead. Out of 30 years of chaos came a new royal family and a stronger kingdom. The Wars of the Roses weren't really about flowers. They were about family, ambition, fear, and power. And they prove something important: when leaders fight for control instead of working together, everyone pays the price. If you enjoyed this story and want to learn about Henry VIII, the king with 6 wives and an even bigger temper, make sure you subscribe and check out the next video. History gets even wilder from here.